Hey guys, tonight we are slipping into the quiet, wool-scented world of ancient Greece, where you're sitting by a flickering oil lamp, the soft whir of a spindle in your hand. The air's warm, heavy with the earthy tang of freshly shorn fleece, and you're about to unravel the sleepy myth of how Athena, goddess of wisdom and craft, taught humans to spin wool. This isn't a tale of thunderbolts or monsters, just a cozy story of thread and patience, but don't expect to stay awake through the details. Fair warning, you might not survive the hypnotic hum of spinning, but let's try. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in a small Greek village, around 800 BCE, where life moves to the rhythm of looms and flocks. The hills are dotted with sheep, their bleats echoing through the dusk, and every household hums with the work of turning wool into cloth. Athena, the grey-eyed goddess, is said to have gifted this skill to mortals, her divine hands guiding the first clumsy threads. The mainstream fact is that spinning was a cornerstone of ancient Greek society, producing textiles for clothes, sails, and trade. You're holding a lump of raw wool, its fibers greasy and tangled, and you're wondering how anyone turned this into anything wearable. The myth paints Athena as a master weaver, her loom producing tapestries no human could match. You picture her on Olympus, coolly demonstrating a spindle's twirl while mortals gape. But there's a quirky tidbit. Some versions say she learned spinning from a mortal woman, only to perfect it with godly flair. You chuckle, imagining Athena muttering, "Nice try, but watch this." Historians still argue whether this myth reflects a real cultural shift. Did spinning emerge as a divine gift, or was it just a poetic nod to women's labor? Either way, you're hooked on the idea of a goddess fussing over thread. You're in a courtyard now, watching a woman tease wool with her fingers, her spindle dangling like a toy. The process is slow, almost meditative, and you're already feeling drowsy. This skill, myth or not, shaped Greece's world, and you're tracing its roots. Was Athena's story a way to sanctify a gritty task, or did it inspire people to see spinning as sacred? The lamps flicker and the wool's soft scent pull you deeper. Let's follow this thread and see where it leads. You're settled in a dim Greek courtyard, the night air cool against your skin as the scent of olive oil and wool drifts from a nearby lamp. You're watching a group of women, their fingers dusted with fleece, working looms and spindles with a rhythm that's almost hypnotic. The clack of wooden frames and the soft whir of spinning fill the space, and you're diving into the world of ancient Greek women weaving under flickering lamplight, their craft a quiet echo of Athena's mythical gift. You're crouched beside a woman, let's call her Chloe, her hands deftly twisting wool into thread. The mainstream fact is that weaving and spinning were central to Greek households by the 8th century BCE, with women producing textiles for everything from tunics to temple offerings. Chloe's loom, a simple upright frame, holds a half-finished cloth, its warped threads taut like a harp. You're mesmerized by her focus, but you notice her yawn. Bet she's been at this since dawn. You joke to yourself, this is Netflix for ancient Greece, minus the popcorn. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Greek women carved tiny loom weights with their initials, like signing a masterpiece no one would see. You spot one on Chloe's loom, a clay lump etched with a crude C. You grin, imagining her thinking, "This shawl's mine, deal with it." Historians still argue whether these marks were personal pride or just practical labels in busy households. Either way, it's a reminder that these women weren't just cogs in a wool machine, they had flair. You're moving closer, the lamp's glow casting shadows on the courtyard walls. The women chat softly, swapping gossip about a neighbor's runaway goat or a festival coming up. Spinning slow, but it's social, a chance to connect while their hands stay busy. You're starting to see why Athena's myth matters. Her divine stamp made this work feel noble, not just endless. You think back to that goddess, twirling her spindle on Olympus. Did she inspire Chloe's steady hands, or is this just human grit at work? Now you're noticing the tools, spindles dangling from threads, loom weights clunking softly. The process is tedious, twist, pull, twist again, but the thread grows, inch by inch. You're tempted to try, but you'd probably tangle it worse than your earbuds. You joke, Chloe's got skills, I'd make a wool pretzel. The courtyard's warmth and a loom's steady clatter are lulling you, the women's murmurs blending into a sleepy hum. You're caught in their rhythm, wondering how this craft shaped their lives. The night's deep, and the stars are out. Let's stay with these weavers a bit longer. You're still in that Greek courtyard, the lamplight flickering as the women's spindles hum, but now your mind's drifting to the bigger picture. Why wool? You're surrounded by the soft, earthy scent of fleece, and you're holding a clump of it, greasy and warm from the sheep it came from. Wool wasn't just fluff in ancient Greece, it was the lifeblood of homes, markets, and even myths. You're uncovering why this fluffy gold-shaped Greek life, and it's a cozier tale than you'd expect. You're sitting with Chloe, watching her tease wool into thread, her fingers nimble despite the late hour. The mainstream fact is that wool was a cornerstone of ancient Greek economy and culture by the 8th century BCE, used for clothing, blankets, sails, and trade goods. It was versatile, warm in winter, dyeable for status, and durable for sailors braving the Aegean. You're amazed how this stuff, basically sheep hair, clothed kings and peasants alike. You joke, wool, the original multitasker, keeping Greece cozy and rich. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Greeks believed wool had healing powers, wrapping it around sore joints or stuffing it into amulets for luck. You chuckle, picturing a warrior with a wool bandage, swearing it's better than any herb. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were superstition or early medicine. Did wool's natural oils actually soothe, or was it just placebo vibes? Either way, you're tempted to try it next time you stub your toe. You're wandering the village now, passing sheep pens where the animals bleat softly, oblivious to their starring role. Wool started here, with shepherds shearing flocks each spring, a sweaty, smelly job you're glad you're dodging. The raw fleece was cleaned, combed, and spun into thread, feeding looms like Chloe's. You think back to Athena's myth, her divine gift making this grunt work feel sacred. Wool's value went beyond fabric, it was currency, status, survival. You mutter, forget gold, wool was Greece's real flex. Now you're at the market, where woolen cloth is stacked in colorful piles, from rough peasant cloaks to fine tunics for the elite. Merchants haggle, and you're struck by how wool tied people together: farmers, spinners, weavers, traders. It's like the ancient version of a supply chain, minus the spreadsheets. You joke, if Amazon sold wool back then, Jeff Bezos would have been a shepherd. The market's buzz and the faint bleat of distant sheep are soothing, pulling you into a drowsy haze. You're starting to see why Athena's spinning gift mattered. Wool wasn't just stuff, it was life. Did her myth inspire pride in this work, or was it just a fancy wrapper for a gritty job? The stars overhead and the wool's soft warmth in your hands are lulling you. Let's keep unraveling this fluffy gold story. You're still in that Greek village, the market's chatter fading as you sit under an olive tree, the night air cool and scented with wool and earth. Your thoughts drift to Athena, the goddess whose spinning gift started this journey. Was she a divine craft guru, descending from Olympus to teach mortals the art of thread, or just a mythic stand-in for human ingenuity? You're pondering whether her role in spinning wool was a godly miracle or a symbolic nod to the women like Chloe, whose hands shaped Greece's textile world. You're twirling a spindle in your fingers, its weight unfamiliar but oddly soothing. The mainstream fact is that Athena, as goddess of wisdom and crafts, was celebrated in Greek mythology as the patron of weaving and spinning, with stories like her contest with Arachne cementing her textile cred. Her myths, recorded in texts like Ovid's Metamorphoses, frame her as the ultimate weaver, her loom producing flawless cloth. You picture her, all serene and godly, showing mortals how to twist wool while they fumble like kids with a new toy. You joke, bet her YouTube tutorial would have gone viral. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Greek vases depict Athena spinning with a golden spindle, as if regular wood wasn't fancy enough for a goddess. You chuckle, imagining her flexing that blinged-out tool like it's a status symbol. Historians still argue whether Athena's spinning role was purely symbolic, glorifying women's domestic work, or if it reflected a real technological leap in Greek textile production. Was her gift a poetic way to honor spinners, or did it mark a moment when spinning tech got a serious upgrade? You're back in the courtyard now, watching Chloe and her friends work their looms, the lamps glow soft on their faces. Athena's myth feels alive here, like a whisper in their steady hands. You're starting to think her story was less about literal lessons and more about giving meaning to this endless task. Spinning wasn't glamorous, your fingers are already cramping just holding the spindle, but her divine stamp made it feel eternal. You think back to the wool's role as Greece's fluffy gold. Did Athena's tale inspire Chloe to keep at it, night after night? Now you're wondering about the women who came before Chloe, the ones who spun without a goddess's hype. Did they figure out the spindle through trial and error, or was there a real Athena moment when someone revolutionized the craft? You joke, maybe Athena was just the first to brand it. The courtyard's quiet now, just the spindle's hum and the occasional clack of a loom weight. The myth's glow and the wool's warmth are pulling you into a sleepy fog. You're caught between the divine and the dusty, curious about how this craft took root. Let's keep chasing Athena's thread. You're crouched in a sunlit Greek courtyard, the air buzzing with the faint hum of a spindle and the earthy scent of wool clinging to your fingers. You're surrounded by women, their hands fumbling with clumps of fleece, trying to master the art of spinning for the first time. This is the clumsy dawn of spinning wool, where Athena's mythical lessons supposedly took hold, turning raw fluff into thread. You're witnessing the awkward, trial and error beginnings of a craft that'll shape Greece, and it's messier than any divine demo. You're watching a young woman, let's call her Daphne, twist a handful of wool, her spindle wobbling like a drunk top. The mainstream fact is that spinning technology, using simple drop spindles, emerged in Greece around the 9th century BCE, transforming wool into usable thread for weaving. Daphne's spindle, a stick with a clay whirl, is basic but effective, pulling the wool into a thin strand as it spins. She curses under her breath as the thread snaps, and you grin. Same, Daphne, you joke, thinking of your own craft fails. Here's a quirky tidbit. Early spinners sometimes practiced with flax or goat hair before tackling wool, believing it was less cursed by tricky fibers. You chuckle, imagining Daphne muttering, "Goat hair's my warm-up act." Historians still argue whether spinning's spread was a sudden leap, maybe inspired by a single innovator, or a gradual skill borrowed from neighbors like the Egyptians. Was there a real first spinner Athena stood for, or was this just collective grit? You're closer now, noticing the pile of fleece at Daphne's feet, tangled and greasy from the sheep. She's learning to draft the fibers, pulling just enough to feed the spindle without breaking the thread. It's slow, and her fingers are clumsy, like yours would be trying to knit for the first time. You think back to Athena's myth, her golden spindle making it look effortless. This is the reality: sweat, snapped threads, and stubborn wool. You joke, Athena's tutorial skipped the blooper reel. Now you're watching another woman guide Daphne, showing her how to keep the spindle twirling. The courtyard's alive with their chatter, some laughing at a lumpy thread, others swapping tips. This isn't divine magic, it's human patience, passed down like a family recipe. You're struck by how this moment, awkward as it is, leads to the looms you saw, the wool that clothed Greece. The spindle's hum and the women's soft voices are lulling you, the sun's warmth heavy on your shoulders. You're wondering if Athena's gift was really just this, people teaching each other, fumbling toward mastery. Let's stay with these first spinners a bit longer. You're still in that sun-warmed Greek courtyard. The spindles gentle were blending with the chatter of women spinning wool, their fingers dusted with fleece. The air's thick with the scent of lanolin and dried herbs, and you're sinking deeper into the rhythm of their work. Beyond the thread, you're noticing something else, the way spinning weaves these women together, creating a social web as strong as the cloth they'll make. You're here to see how this craft, touched by Athena's myth, bonded Greek women's communities in ways that went far beyond wool. You're sitting near Daphne, who's finally getting the hang of her spindle, her thread less lumpy now. The mainstream fact is that spinning was a daily task for most Greek women by the 8th century BCE, done in groups that turned household chores into social hubs. These gatherings, often in courtyards or homes, were where women shared stories, advice, and laughter while their spindles twirled. You watch Daphne grin as an older woman, maybe her aunt, teases her about a wonky thread. You joke, this is ancient Greece's book club, but with more lint. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some women spun during childbirth vigils, believing the spindle's rhythm eased labor pains or brought luck. You chuckle, picturing a midwife twirling a spindle like it's a magic wand. Historians still argue whether these spinning circles were purely practical or held deeper cultural weight. Were they just about getting work done, or did they strengthen bonds that held villages together? Either way, you're feeling the warmth of this group. Their voices are soft, sleepy hum. You're moving through the courtyard now, dodging a stray wool tuft. The women range from teens to grandmothers, each with a spindle or comb, their hands moving in sync. They're swapping gossip, a merchant's shady deal, a neighbor's new goat, and passing around a clay cup of watered wine. You think back to Athena's myth, her divine gift framing spinning as sacred. It's like she blessed these moments, making the mundane feel eternal. You're starting to see why her story stuck. This isn't just work. It's connection, community, life. Now you're noticing a younger girl, maybe 10, mimicking Daphne's moves with a tiny spindle. The older women cheer her on, and you're struck by how spinning passes down, not just thread but trust. It's a chain, from Athena's mythical lesson to this courtyard, linking generations. You joke, forget TikTok. This is how you go viral in 800 BCE. The courtyard's glow, the wool's softness, and the women's laughter are wrapping you in a drowsy cocoon. You're wondering how these bonds shaped Greece, and if Athena knew her gift would mean more than thread. The spindle's hum is fading, but you're not ready to leave yet. You're still nestled in that Greek courtyard, the women's laughter and the soft whir of spindles fading into a soothing hum, like a lullaby woven from wool. The scent of fleece and olive oil lingers, but now you're focusing on the tools in their hands, those simple, unassuming spindles and loom weights that turn raw wool into thread and cloth. You're examining how these basic gadgets, born from Athena's mythical gift, evolved to shape ancient Greek textiles, and it's a quiet marvel of human ingenuity. You're holding a drop spindle, a wooden stick with a clay whirl at the bottom, its weight balanced just right. The mainstream fact is that by the 8th century BCE, Greek spinners used these portable tools to twist wool into thread, a technology that spread across the Mediterranean for its simplicity and effectiveness. You give it a clumsy twirl, and the wool tangles instantly. Daphne, nearby, stifles a laugh, and you grin. "Yeah, I'm no Athena," you joke, brushing off the fluff. The spindle's genius is its portability. Women could spin anywhere, from courtyards to market stalls. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Greek spindles were carved with tiny prayers to Athena, as if the goddess herself guided each twist. You spot one with a faint owl etching, her sacred symbol, and chuckle, imagining a spinner whispering, "Bless this thread, owl lady." Historians still argue whether these decorations were devotional or just craftswomen flexing their style. Did they believe Athena's spirit was in the tool, or were they just making tedious work feel special? You're wandering to a loom now, where Chloe adjusts her warped threads, weighted by clay lumps. These weights, some etched with those initials you saw earlier, keep the fabric taut. They're not fancy, think baked pottery, but they're the unsung heroes of every tunic and sail in Greece. You think back to the wool's role as fluffy gold, how it fueled trade and clothed armies. These tools made it possible, turning chaotic fleece into order. You're starting to respect their simplicity, like the ancient version of a Swiss Army knife. Now you're noticing how the tools vary. Some spindles are heavier for thicker thread, others slim for fine work. The women swap them like artists picking brushes, their skill honed over years. You joke, "This is low-tech, high skill, and I'd break it in 5 minutes." The courtyard's rhythm, the spindle's twirl, the weight's soft clunk, is pulling you into a drowsy haze. You're wondering how these tools spread, if Athena's myth inspired their design or just celebrated their use. The lamps flicker and the wool's warmth are heavy, and you're ready to keep exploring this craft's quiet evolution. You're still in that Greek courtyard, the spindle's hum and the loom's gentle clack wrapping you in a sleepy cocoon, but now you're stepping back to question the story itself. The myth of Athena teaching humans to spin wool is beautiful, but how does it stack up against the gritty reality? You're sifting through the clash between her divine tale and the archaeological clues, broken spindles, loom weights, and scraps of ancient cloth that tell a muddier truth about spinning's origins. Let's see where myth and evidence tangle. You're holding a cracked clay whirl, dug up from some ancient Greek village, its edges worn from years of spinning. The mainstream fact is that archaeological finds, like spindle whirls and loom weights from sites like Mycenae, confirm spinning was widespread in Greece by the 9th century BCE, predating many written myths about Athena. These artifacts, often plain, sometimes etched with patterns, prove women were twisting wool long before poets sang of goddesses. You turn the whirl over, feeling its weight. "No golden spindles here," you joke, thinking of Athena's blinged-out myth. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some dig sites have uncovered tiny clay sheep figurines near spinning tools, possibly offerings to ensure a good wool harvest. You chuckle, picturing a spinner tucking a toy sheep beside her loom for luck, like a woolly good luck charm. Historians still argue whether Athena's myth was inspired by these early spinners or invented to give their work divine cred. Did the goddess's story emerge to explain an old craft, Or was it a later embellishment to make women's labor feel holy? You're wandering through a mental museum now, picturing display cases of frayed wool threads and chipped loom weights. These finds ground the myth in reality. Spinning wasn't a godly gift dropped from Olympus but a skill honed over generations, maybe borrowed from neighbors like the Minoans. You think back to Daphne's clumsy first threads, the women's courtyard chatter. That's the real story, not Athena's perfect loom. Yet the myth's power lingers, giving their work a glow. You joke, Athena's PR team deserves a raise for this branding. Now you're back in the courtyard, watching Chloe's steady hands. The archaeological truth doesn't dim the myth's charm, it makes it richer. Spinning was human, messy, communal, and Athena's tale wrapped it in starlight. You're wondering if the women believed she guided their fingers or if they just liked the story. The lamp's flicker and the wool's soft scent are lulling you, the whirl's weight heavy in your hand. You're caught between myth and mud, curious about how this craft really began. Let's keep unraveling the truth. You're standing in a sun-baked Greek pasture, the air thick with the musky scent of sheep and the distant bleat of a restless flock. Dust clings to your sandals as you watch a shepherd shearer wriggling you, her wool falling in greasy clumps. You're diving into the labor-intensive journey of wool from sheep to spindle, tracing the sweaty, smelly steps before it reaches the hands of spinners like Chloe and Daphne. This is the gritty start of Athena's mythical craft, and it's far from the goddess's polished loom. You're closer now, the shearer's bronze blade glinting as he works. The mainstream fact is that wool preparation in ancient Greece, around the 8th century BCE, was a multi-step ordeal: shearing, washing, combing, and carding to ready fleece for spinning. Each spring, shepherds harvested wool, which women then cleaned in streams to remove dirt and lanolin. You're wincing at the pile of fleece, matted, twig-strewn, and reeking of sheep sweat. Oh de barn, you joke, holding your nose. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Greek women burned herbs like thyme while washing wool, believing it kept evil spirits from tangling the fibers. You chuckle, imagining a spinner waving a smoking bundle over the fleece like a woolly exorcism. Historians still argue whether these rituals were purely superstitious or had practical benefits, like repelling moths. Either way, you're glad you're not scrubbing fleece in a cold stream with a side of incense. You're following the wool now, to a riverside where women kneel, dunking fleece in water and scrubbing it with stones. It's backbreaking, and their chatter, about a festival or a bad batch of olives, keeps them going. The cleaned wool, still damp, is hung to dry, then combed with bone tools to tease out knots. You think back to the courtyard, where Daphne spun smooth thread. This is the invisible work behind her spindle, and it's no divine gift, just human grit. You joke, Athena skipped the part about sheep wrestling. Now you're watching a woman card wool, dragging it through spike boards to align the fibers. It's tedious, and her hands are scratched, but the result is fluffy, ready for spinning. You're struck by how this chain, from pasture to river to courtyard, feeds Greece's textile world. The wool's journey is a team effort, and Athena's myth feels like a nod to these unsung labours. The river's gurgle and the sheep's soft bleats are lulling you, the fleece's warmth heavy in your hands. You're wondering how this raw stuff became Greece's fluffy gold. Let's keep following the wool's path. You're strolling through a bustling Greek marketplace, the air alive with the shouts of merchants and the sharp scent of dyed wool stacked in vibrant piles. The clink of coins and the rustle of cloth surround you, and you're holding a skein of freshly spun thread, its fibers soft but sturdy. You're diving into how spinning fueled Greece's textile trade, turning Athena's mythical gift into economic muscle. This isn't just about thread, It's about how wool spun wealth and power for ancient Greece. You're weaving through stalls, where traders hawk everything from rough cloaks to fine shawls dyed purple with rare sea snails. The mainstream fact is that by the 8th century BCE, textiles, especially woolen ones, were a major driver of Greece's economy, traded across the Mediterranean for grain, wine, and silver. Spun thread, like the kind Chloe and Daphne produced, was the raw material for this trade, woven into goods that clothed Athens and sailed to Egypt. You're impressed, muttering, wool was basically Greece's crypto. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some merchants swore by lucky threads, claiming certain spinners' wool brought better profits, like a textile superstition. You chuckle, picturing a trader sniffing a skein, saying, "This one's got money vibes." Historians still argue whether the textile trade's boom was driven by women's spinning labor or by elite merchants who controlled the markets. Did spinners like Chloe see any of the wealth, or were they just cogs in the trade machine? You're at a stall now, watching a merchant haggle over a bale of dyed wool, his hands stained blue from handling it. The thread you're holding came from courtyards like the one you visited, spun by women whose work ripples out to ports and foreign cities. You think back to the sheep shearing, the river washing, each step feeding this market's pulse. Athena's myth feels distant but relevant, her spinning gift powering not just homes but empires. You joke, she's the patron saint of GDP. Now you're near the docks, where ships load woolen goods for Crete or Phoenicia. The scale's dizzying, thousands of spindles, countless hours, all for these bales. Spinning wasn't just domestic, it was industrial, a quiet engine of trade. You're starting to see why wool was Greece's fluffy gold, and why Athena's story mattered. It gave this work a divine spotlight. The sea's rhythm and the market's hum are lulling you, the skein's weight grounding you. You're wondering who really profited from this trade, and if the spinners knew their thread's reach. Let's keep tracing these economic threads. You're back in the Greek courtyard, the familiar hum of spindles and the soft clack of loom weights filling the air, scented with wool and olive oil. The women around you, Chloe, Daphne, and their kin, are spinning with practiced ease, their threads piling up for the looms. But now a question tugs at you. Was spinning strictly women's work, or did men ever pick up a spindle in ancient Greece? You're digging into whether Athena's craft crossed gender lines, challenging the myth's feminine frame and the dusty norms of village life. You're sitting near Chloe, watching her twirl her spindle with a rhythm that's almost musical. The mainstream fact is that ancient Greek texts, like Homer's Odyssey, and vase paintings overwhelmingly depict spinning and weaving as women's tasks, tied to domestic life and Athena's patronage. It's no surprise, Greek society was rigid, with women handling household crafts while men farmed or fought. But you're squinting at a young boy nearby, clumsily twisting wool under his mother's watchful eye. Hold up, you joke, is that a dude spinning? Here's a quirky tidbit. Some archaeological finds, like spindle whorls in male graves, hint that men might have spun in certain contexts, maybe in poorer households or rural areas. You chuckle, imagining a burly farmer sneaking a spindle session, muttering, "Don't tell the guys." Historians still argue whether these exceptions were practical, men helping out when needed, or if spinning was so gendered that male spinners were rare oddballs. Did social norms lock men out, or was it just less documented? You're wandering the village now, passing men hauling grain or sharpening tools, their hands far from wool. The courtyard feels like a women's sanctuary, where spindles are as natural as cooking pots. But you're thinking about that boy, maybe learning to help his family or because he's too young for manly work. You think back to the textile trade, how its wealth relied on spinners. If men spun, even rarely, it'd mean Athena's gift stretched further than the myths led on. You joke, maybe her masterclass was open enrollment. Now you're picturing a struggling household, where a man might have grabbed a spindle to make ends meet, norms be damned. The evidence is slim, but the idea's intriguing, spinning as a skill, not a gender role. The courtyard's warmth, the wool's softness, and the women's chatter are lulling you, the boy's awkward thread a quiet rebellion. You're wondering if Athena's myth hid these outliers, or if she'd approve of anyone twirling a spindle. The lamps flicker and the night's calm are heavy, pulling you deeper. Let's keep questioning this gendered thread. You're standing in a bustling Greek courtyard, the familiar hum of spindles fading as your mind wanders beyond Greece's borders, to distant lands where other cultures spin their own tales of textile craft. The air still carries the scent of wool, but you're now comparing Athena's spinning myth to the stories of rival cultures, Egyptians, Mesopotamians, and others, whose gods and heroes also claimed credit for teaching humans to spin. You're unraveling how Greece's woolly legend stacks up against these global threads, and it's a cozy clash of divine craft. You're holding a skein of Chloe's thread, its texture grounding you as you imagine an Egyptian weaver by the Nile. The mainstream fact is that many ancient cultures, including Egypt and Mesopotamia, had their own textile myths by the 8th century BCE, often tying spinning to goddesses like Egypt's Neith or Mesopotamia's Utu. These deities, like Athena, were said to gift spinning to mortals, their stories mirroring Greece's but flavored by local beliefs. You picture Neith with a linen spindle, smirking at Athena's wool obsession. Linen's cooler, you joke, fanning yourself in the imaginary desert heat. Here's a quirky tidbit. Mesopotamian texts describe Utu spinning with a spider's grace, her threads literally weaving the cosmos. You chuckle, imagining a goddess untangling a cosmic wool knot while mortals gape. Historians still argue whether these myths sprang up independently or if trade routes spread the idea of divine spinners across cultures. Did Greece borrow Athena's tale from older neighbors, or was spinning so universal it inspired parallel stories everywhere? You're drifting to a Mesopotamian market now, where clay tablets record wool and linen trades, much like Greece's textile hustle. Their spinners used tools similar to Chloe's, drop spindles, loom weights, but their myths leaned heavier on cosmic metaphors. Egypt's Neith, meanwhile, spun linen for pharaoh's robes, not wool for tunics. You think back to Greece's fluffy gold, how wool defined its trade. Athena's myth feels practical by comparison, grounded in village life, not starry skies. You joke, Athena's the relatable goddess, less cosmos, more carding. Now you're back in the courtyard, Chloe's spindle twirling as you ponder these rival tales. They're different but familiar, each tying a gritty craft to divine origins. Athena's story shines for its focus on wool, on women like Chloe, but you're struck by the shared human need to make spinning sacred. The lamp's glow and the wool's warmth are lulling you, the distant echo of other cultures' myths blending with Greece's. You're wondering if Athena's gift was unique or just one thread in a global tapestry. Let's keep comparing these divine spinners. You're back in the Greek courtyard, the soft hum of spindles and the warm scent of wool wrapping you like a blanket, but now you're stepping into a quieter, more sacred space. The women around you are still spinning, but some threads are set aside, wound carefully for something beyond tunics or trade. You're exploring how spinning wove itself into Greek religious practices, where Athena's mythical gift took on a divine glow, turning everyday thread into offerings and rituals that connected mortals to the gods. You're following Chloe as she carries a skein of her finest thread to a small shrine, its stone altar adorned with owl carvings, Athena's symbol. The mainstream fact is that by the 8th century BCE, Spun wool was often used in Greek religious ceremonies, from temple offerings to festival garments dedicated to deities like Athena. Chloe places her thread on the altar, a gift to thank the goddess for her craft. You're struck by the reverence in her hands, the same ones that spun gossip-soaked threads in the courtyard. Talk about a side hustle, you joke, eyeing the shrine's flicker of oil lamps. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Greek women spun sacred threads during full moons, believing they held Athena's blessing for protection or fertility. You chuckle, picturing a midnight spinning session, the women whispering prayers under starlight. Historians still argue whether these rituals were widespread or limited to certain cults. Did every spinner offer threads to Athena, or was it a niche practice tied to her temples? Either way, you're feeling the weight of Chloe's offering, like her threads a bridge to the divine. You're at a festival now, where women parade in woolen robes they spun and wove for Athena's honor. The cloth, dyed bright and draped over statues, is spun with extra care, each thread a prayer. You think back to the wool's journey, shearing, washing, carding, all leading to this sacred moment. Athena's myth feels alive here, her spinning gift not just practical but holy. You're starting to see why her story mattered. It turned a daily chore into a way to touch the gods. You joke, spinning's the original multitasking, cloth and miracles in one. Now you're back at the shrine, the air heavy with incense and the soft chant of a priestess. Chloe's thread joins others, a pile of offerings that'll be burned or woven into temple cloth. The act's simple but profound, tying the courtyard's labor to something eternal. The lamp's glow and the wool's earthy warmth are lulling you, the shrine's calm sinking into your bones. You're wondering if Athena's gift was meant for this, craft as worship, thread as devotion. The ritual's rhythm and the night's stillness are pulling you deeper. Let's linger in this sacred space a bit more. You're slipping out of the sacred glow of that Greek shrine, the scent of incense and wool fading as you wander into a broader sweep of time. The courtyard's spindle hum lingers in your mind, but now you're tracing the arc of spinning's story beyond ancient Greece, through its decline and flickers of revival in later eras. Athena's mythical gift feels timeless, yet the craft itself faced challenges, fading under new tech and trade only to resurface in unexpected ways. You're exploring how this ancient art persisted, carrying whispers of the goddess into new centuries. You're standing in a Roman-era market, around 100 CE, where Greek-style woolen goods still sell, but mechanized looms from distant lands are creeping in. The mainstream fact is that by the Roman period, spinning began to shift from a household staple to a more commercial craft, with larger workshops and imported textiles reducing the need for homespun thread. You watch a woman spin, her spindle slower than Chloe's, her eyes on a pile of ready-made cloth from Egypt. Globalization, ancient style, you joke, noting the market's foreign buzz. Here's a quirky tidbit. In medieval Greece, some spinners kept Athena's charms, small L-shaped beads, tucked in their wool baskets for luck, a nod to the goddess long after her temples faded. You chuckle, imagining a spinner clutching her owl like a talisman against tangled fibers. Historians still argue whether spinning's decline was due to technological leaps, like water-powered mills, or cultural shifts that devalued women's crafts. Did spinners cling to Athena's legacy, or was it buried under Rome's sprawl? You're fast-forwarding now, to a Byzantine village where spinning revives in homes, a quiet rebellion against imported silks. Women teach daughters the old ways, their spindles echoing Daphne's clumsy first tries. By the 19th century, Greek folk traditions revive hand-spinning for festivals, tying threads to ancient rituals you saw at Athena's shrine. You think back to the economic threads, how wool fueled trade. Spinning's never fully died, It adapts, like wool itself, bending but not breaking. You joke, Athena's gift, the craft that keeps on giving, like a bad earworm. Now you're in a modern Greek museum, eyeing a display of ancient spindle whorls beside a video of traditional spinners. The craft's a niche now, preserved by artisans who spin for heritage, not survival. The museum's hum and the wool's faint scent pull you into a drowsy haze. You're struck by spinning's stubborn survival, a thread from Athena's myth to today. Was her gift the skill itself or the resilience it inspired? The display's soft light and the spindle's quiet legacy are heavy, lulling you. Let's wrap up this timeless craft's journey. You're perched on a rocky Greek hillside, the twilight casting a soft glow over the village below, where the faint hum of spindles drifts up like a memory. The air's cool, scented with wool and wild thyme, and you're holding a skein of thread, its fibers a quiet testament to Athena's mythical gift. You're reflecting on the enduring mark of spinning, how this simple craft, born in myth, honed by human hands, wove itself into the fabric of history, from ancient courtyards to modern looms. This is the final thread of the journey, and it's time to tie it off. You're gazing at the village, picturing Chloe, Daphne, and countless others, their spindles twirling through time. The mainstream fact is that spinning, as a cornerstone of ancient Greek life, shaped not just textiles but society, economy, and ritual, its legacy preserved in artifacts like the whorls you held and the myths of Athena. This craft built communities, clothed empires, and carried prayers to the gods, all from humble wool. You smile, joking, Athena's gift was the original open-source project, everyone's still using it. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some modern Greek spinners claim they feel Athena's presence when their threads align perfectly, like a divine high five. You chuckle, imagining a goddess nodding approvingly over a flawless skein. Historians still argue whether Athena's myth was a poetic gloss on a practical skill or a spark that elevated spinning to art. Did her story inspire innovation, or was it just a way to make endless wool twisting feel epic? Either way, you're awed by its staying power. You're walking down the hill now, passing sheep grazing under the stars, their fleece the start of it all. From shearing to shrine, market to museum, spinning's thread connects past to present. You think back to the women's laughter, the sacred offerings, the trade ships loaded with wool. Athena's legacy isn't just in the cloth but in the human spirit, curious, stubborn, creative. You joke, she taught us to spin, and we've been spinning stories ever since. The night's deepening, the village's lights twinkling like scattered beads. The skein in your hand feels like a promise, its weight a sleepy anchor. Spinning's not just craft, it's connection, resilience, a whisper of divinity in every twist. You're ready to let go, the stars and the wool's warmth pulling you into a gentle haze. As the sky folds into darkness, the hillside's quiet wraps you like a shawl, soft and sure. The village below breathes slow, its spindles still, their work done for now. You feel the thread's journey fade, each twist blending into the night's calm. The sheep's distant bleats, the rustle of leaves, and the cool earth beneath you cradle your thoughts, letting them drift. Athena's gift lingers, not in wool but in the peace it wove, a tapestry of human hands across time. Sink deeper, let the stars blur, and rest. The threads will hold. Good night.